Hello my friends and welcome, my name is Dennis and this is the latest update from Ukraine. So there was the second massive attack of the North Korean soldiers. Well, I have this video, I can show just some of the screenshots over here, but the full video I'll publish on my Telegram. The video was filmed partially from the drone and also from the Ukrainian soldiers' perspective. And there are some of the images of the outcome of the North Korean strikes were published as well, showing that at least 20 of North Koreans were zeroed, and the rest were wounded or just retreated from the attacking spots. But later on Russia tried to gain the territory after all with more capable forces. Yeah guys, it's all happening in the Kursk region. By the way, I'm tired of the green background, transparent one, so have some sort of the studio. This is Grisha. He will be replaced by something else in the coming days, but for a few more videos he will stay with me. And guys, that after all we say that Russia takes the ground in the Kursk region. So yesterday they moved towards Davydov, and I would say that they completely cut this crossroad for Ukrainian army. Before it was in a gray area, so if Russians manage to push Ukraine even further, they'll take control entirely over this very strategic part. It is very important because during the winter period of time you need a robust and paved roads, which are not many in the Kursk direction. And later on Russians moved over here, as I said to you, with more capable forces than North Koreans. So the idea to use North Koreans is to deflect the attention of Ukrainian army and to cause Ukraine to use many more resources to counteract that threat, and immediately after North Koreans, Russians go. So it's better not to underestimate the Russian tactics with North Koreans. We see how they use it. So with this movement, there is now the threat for the Ukrainian army group in Pogrebki, Orlovka and Novaya Sorochina. In Pogrebki, actually, Russians were encircled before by Ukrainian army and they were forced to leave this village with heavy losses. But for now, the threat goes for Ukrainian side. And we see how Russia has two of those attack vectors, so for sure they want to jam Ukrainian army. Well, honestly guys, I don't see the perspective for Ukrainian army to hold in the Kursk region for this entire winter. In the best case scenario for Ukraine may defend Sudzha. So far Sudzha is the biggest settlement which Ukraine was capable to take, and there are also some of the villages in this region. But this northern part, it's very hard to defend. First of all, because there are not many roads which you may use for supplies during the winter time. Yeah, you may say that the field roads are more or less okay if the temperature goes below zero, if the soil is frozen, yes, you may do it. But in this region of Russia, the temperatures fluctuate from plus to minus throughout the winter. It's not the Russian Siberian region where you have the cold temperature all the winter. No. That's why here you cannot provide constant, reliable supplies to your army. So one day you can deliver supplies, but the other day snow falls and the temperature goes above and it will all turn to the dirt. So for Ukraine, it's a huge challenge to keep the presence in the Kursk region. And yesterday there was the big Putin speech at press conference where he also spoke about Kursk. He told that Russia will liberate Kursk in a military way, but he hesitated to say when. So for Russia, after all, this situation is not that pleasant, that some of the army managed to get Russian territory, original Russia, under control. And we all understand that Putin called many times the Russian army to liberate this territory, but somehow it doesn't work that fast as they think. Yeah, they take the ground here and there, but Ukraine still, for this day, holds. And speaking about Kursk, is not that pleasant for the Russian leader, for Chechens as well, for Ahmad Badrion, it's better to say. But for Ukrainian army, it should have been a bigger goal in this operation than just to cause uncomfort for the Russian leader. Without the military strategic move, I don't think that this operation worth the losses. Yes, Russia is forced to send some of their extra forces to the Kursk region, but as well as Ukraine, by the way. So you may look at this from different perspectives, different angles, but only time might show if this operation was really necessary for Ukraine. For this time, for this hour, I think that this operation from the tactical perspective, not from the strategic one, from the tactical one, was profitable. By the way guys, if you want to support the job that I do on YouTube, you may also join me on Patreon. The link for my Patreon page is available right in the video description below. Thank you so much for supporting my motivation. Kind of the interesting news are coming from Kherson. This night, Russians tried to cross the Dnieper River through Antonovsky Bridge, which was destroyed, but Russians tried to use the rubber boats. We have the report about it from our military officer, Officer Plus. It's his Telegram channel. Well, the last night, under the cover of the Russian artillery fire, Russians tried to advance to Antonovsky Bridge and take the positions as their possible bridgehead. This move from the Russian side is quite logical outcome because they concentrated some of their reinforcements before and already tried to advance, but with much less forces, so this strike today was more massive. However, even for this time, Russians didn't manage to cross the Dnieper River. All of their boats were spotted by Ukrainian thermal cameras, and Ukrainian warriors stopped this assault with the help of the artillery. And later on, Russians bombed the Kherson city, causing some of the losses among civilians. It's crazy. Why did they do it? Maybe they just went angry because their operation in Kherson failed. There were several of the sabotage cases performed by Ukraine deep inside Russia. Usually the Russian citizens are hired for this mission and they are told to go to the Russian military branches, to the military bases and fire up something. Like in this case, it was one of the Russian refueling tracks located in one of the military airfields. Video stops right here. I wonder if the fire spread throughout the facility. Probably not. The Murmansk region of the Russian Federation. Yesterday there was the kaboom recorded in one of the military airfields. Well, this base is used for the Russian fighter jets and bombers. Well, for now we have nothing more about this video. The place is very remote, far to the north from Ukrainian border. Was it a Ukrainian drone strike or something else? Maybe someone smoked at the wrong place. Hard to check. I just hope that we'll have more data about it. And there's one more sabotage done by Ukrainian military intelligence. Let's watch this video. So they show some sort of the flame here. As Ukrainian intelligence says, Russia lost Antonov 72 aircraft because of the internal kaboom. Again, hard to check this information just from this CCTV camera, but Ukrainian intelligence officially stated that. There are some of the Antonov 72 in the Russian army. They've been used as the transport airplanes. Okay, what's about the outcome for the Russian military bases? We see more and more videos of how Russians load their equipment and also army personnel into Ilyushin-76 transport airplanes, and later on all of those are being sent to Russia. This sort of the activity is reported in all of the Russian military bases in Syria. Well, the Russian diplomats are still trying to negotiate the presence of the Russian army in Syria, first of all in Khmeimim air base and Tartus port. They negotiated with Turkey and New Power of Syria. We'll see how it goes for Russia, but I think that after all, Turkey is against it. Well, where Russia was successful yesterday is that they launched a massive cyber attack on the Ukrainian government services. Most of the data is now blocked for the ordinary persons and also some of the companies. You can't even take the birth certificate. Luckily, the Ukrainian bank system is working. The restoration of the Ukrainian data system may take around a couple of weeks, they say. I also think that some of the data could have leaked to the Russian hands, and they may use this information in their own favor in their next cyber strikes. Yes, Ukrainian officials immediately say that the data leak hasn't been confirmed, but what else they can say? The system is weak and all of your data was leaked to the Russian side. The world is heading towards digitalization of all of the data. This process is unstoppable, but at the same time it could be not safe. And it seems like in Ukrainian case the security of the data wasn't really provided properly. In my last video I've reported about ATACMS and Storm Shadow missiles spotted over Crimea and Rostov Oblast. Well, we know what was hit in Rostov region. It is Novoshakhtinsky oil refinery facility. This time the critical part of the infrastructure was kaboomed. Before there were already 3 of the strikes on this facility, but finally with the 4th one the facility is absolutely no-go. In general, for the last year, Russia lost 1/3 of its capacity to produce diesel fuel and benzene, so oil refineries were hit elsewhere. And it also contributes to the problems in the Russian economy. Alright, there were the big news in Russia, kind of the long press conference of Vladimir Putin, which lasted for nearly 4 hours. Putin does it every year. There were many of the things discussed, and usual Putin's bullshit was pronounced by him. Well, for us it's quite important because we need to understand how the Russian Tsar thinks. And the general passage from Putin was that he is quite comfortable in the current environment of war. He even called this war движуха, which you may translate as some sort of the action. And he was laughing by the time he said that. And also he called for some sort of the competition, so Russia will strike, for example, Ukrainian city of Kiev, which they did today. I'm gonna speak about it in this video. And Americans or other allies will try to intercept the Russian missiles. Yes, he said about populated place, the capital city, not any military infrastructure, not the decision-making centers, no, just the city. Yes, I sometimes do not agree with Zelensky, but here he is right. People are dying and he thinks it's interesting. Da best. So Putin is very, very comfortable right now. He thinks that Russia has never lived a better life than during this war, at least for him personally. Well, I think that first of all because Russia still has some of the partners to trade their oil gas, like for example Asian countries, plus Russia is still capable to sell the part of their oil even to the Western consumers with the help of their ghost tanker fleet. Plus the Russian FSB elite with Putin established a dictatorship in Russia, like food dictatorship. It was their goal and they used the war as an excuse. Yeah, Putin also touched some of the economy problems, but that was not so interesting for him as the war. He said that economy in Russia is doing much better than some of the Western economies, which is absolute nonsense. But then Putin spoke about the war. He was really joyful. He was glad that people and politicians, some officials, especially in the West, are afraid of him, and he really takes the pleasure of that. So he is psychopath. I don't have the other explanation for the Russian leader. And yes, after Putin's conference, Russia hit the central part of the Kiev city. I know this place, I was walking there many of the times. This is the St. Nicholas Church. Quite a nice one, and it's located in one of the business districts of Kiev. And there is no any sort of the military infrastructure here. So the damage was done to the cathedral itself. Some of the windows were wrecked. This is the area, and just across the road you can see the devastation down to the business center. One of the missiles even hit the roof of this business center, which is called Business Center Toronto. As you can see, the penthouse here is gone, and there are also some of the damages to this part, and this is the church I showed you before. Luckily for now, no losses were reported. It was early morning. No one was inside of that building except of the security. This picture was also taken today from the spot, so after all some of the apartments were damaged and the rescue team evacuated those cute looking dogs from one of the apartments. I just hope that the owners of those dogs are okay. As for the strike, Russia used Kinjal missiles. Those are hypersonic and being launched from the MiG-31 Russian fighter jets. Well, most of those were shot down, but some hit their targets, and also Borispol, the city where I used to live before, also was attacked. Well, in this case, luckily it wasn't the residential area, it was the storage place just for the cargo, you may say, the places where usually trucks park. Well, Russians stated already that it was the military storage, but even before the war it was just a usual storage for the goods in the markets. I think that soon we're gonna receive the images from inside that the fire is eliminated to confirm everything. Here we have the night image of the place before the strike, and this is after the strike. That is what Russia brings to everyone. The usual Russian methods of terror. And now their air reigns again in Ukraine, and it could be Areshnik this time. How do we know that it could be Areshnik? Well, because the airspace in Arhangelsk, so the spot where Russia usually launched their Areshnik, is being closed. So we have the Areshnik warning now in Ukraine, so ballistic missile which flies really fast, and in a matter of 20-30 minutes it may reach Ukraine. Well, by the time I'm recording the video there was no strike, but I'll keep you updated on this situation. Well, I guess that Ukraine has already responded on today's Russia strike by hitting the FSB building in occupied Donetsk. Yeah, we have the usual stuff where Ukraine aims towards the Russian military infrastructure, but Russia hits mostly civilian one. And now guys, let's review the situation on the ground. So it was the day before yesterday, and today. As you can see, Russia moved quite a lot in Shevchenko. They're very close to Pokrovsk. I think I'll change the map for this one for you to see the settlements more precisely and the roads as well. So near Pokrovsk, Russia has already created a huge bridgehead for the further movement in two of the directions, one to Pokrovsk and the other one southbound. They're trying to encircle the big Ukrainian group in Kurakhova, so in this area. Here we also have some turn movement. As I've told you, Russians are actually over here. They've reached this entire place all across the river. As for the situation with the Ukrainian army encirclement in Uspenivka, well, we have the details about it from the deep state military map source. Well, they confirmed that the part of the Ukrainian forces were able to get out from this pocket, but sadly not everyone. There were losses among Ukrainian soldiers, and I wonder about those who were wounded, who cannot move, run, and break through the Russian encirclement. And this source, as many of the Ukrainian volunteers and military, blame Ukrainian military command for this case. And basically that's the only information I was able to find. Russians do not publish any sort of the videos with the Ukrainian soldiers imprisoned, which they would obviously like to do for their propaganda purposes. So I think that mainly Ukrainian soldiers went from the area, but with significant losses. The similar situation, or potentially even worse, is happening in Makarovka, where Ukrainian soldiers are being encircled for several of the days. And there is also a huge risk for the Storozheva group to be encircled as well if Russians finally advance towards Neskuchne. So there will be no chance for Ukrainian army group to get out from Makarovka with this double encirclement. Today we see the light advancement of the Russian army through this forest line towards Neskuchne after all, so the situation is not getting better there. As for the front lines, there were no new recent update except of what I've told you, and the good news for Ukraine that Ukraine was capable to stop the Russian offensive and actually the attempt to get to Kherson by the Russian army. And you know, something tells me that it's not the last Russian attack attempt towards Kherson. Yesterday this video was shared in internet saying that Ukraine shot down a Ukrainian MiG-29 somewhere in the Kursk region. And you can definitely see the Russian airplane with the registration number. This is MiG-29 indeed. But here's one more photo of this particular airplane with particular registration number. Yes, it was in Suja, standing there as a monument. 4 months ago, because of the heavy fights in the town, this airplane was hit by artillery shell. And this is the Google Earth image of it, so the Russian MiG-29 wasn't really shot down yesterday by Ukraine. You know, just some guys from Ukrainian military decided to film their own video with this airplane on the background with all those Russian red stars, but in fact it's the monument. Ukraine shot down many of the Russian airplanes throughout this war, but in this particular case, no, I'm telling you about it just to clarify the information, because here I speak truth, or at least I try to do it. Right guys, finally we have more detailed images, I would say very detailed, of the Yuzhmash military factory of Ukraine in Dnipro city, the factory which produces some of the shells and rockets for the Ukrainian army, and which was hit by the Russian Oreshnik missile. Yeah guys, I've took this map from the Russian sources because some of the information are not just being spread by Ukrainian media channels, and here we may definitely see some of the damages done to Yuzhmash factory by the Russian Oreshnik missile. The roofs of many of the facilities were hit and damaged. Especially here you can see it. Well, I give few percent that it's some sort of the Photoshop, could be as well. But if it is a Photoshop, it is done very professionally. This is at Dnipro city, and here's the Yuzhmash factory. It's huge, and here you can see old satellite images. Well, there was one of the satellite images published before. It showed no devastation to the facility, but the image quality was not that great. So, I would wait for more satellite images coming from the place, because those images before that I showed you shared by the Russian side, and I don't really trust those. I need to dig actually for more information to confirm that those satellite images are presented by the Western companies. Remember the case with two of the Russian oil tankers which just collapsed in the water of the Azov Sea. Well, here is the result of their neglectness of that accident. It is a big natural disaster, not just for Russia but also for Ukraine. It happens because the greedy bastards of the Russian vessel companies try to minimize their expenses and they do not invest in the new fleet. They use very old ships which are in lack of safety. And now, as Russian sources say, it could be the entire disaster for the region. Right now, to the other news, it seems like YouTube will be blocked in Russia. After all, we have the clue about it from Putin himself. Putin basically accused Google and YouTube for the wrong policy towards Russia, and if they change it, they'll be free to go on the Russian market. Well, now Russia tries to come out with their own alternatives to YouTube, but that simply doesn't work. So now Russia tries to slow down YouTube again on its territory to make users to search for alternate options. But what's the alternate option for the biggest video hosting out there? It doesn't exist really in the world, not just in Russia. The Washington Post says that there will be the meeting between Donald Trump and Putin the next year. Well, it could be. And now about this hat, it's the logo of the Winnipeg Jets. I like hockey, I watch it sometimes, and this team performs quite well. Moreover, they will have the Ukrainian Heritage Night, so the game between Winnipeg Jets and Anaheim Ducks, which will start on January the 2nd, 2025, so quite soon, just after New Year at 7 p.m. I'll watch it 100%, and you may buy some tickets on the website if you live in Canada. So Winnipegs have the symbol of the airplane, as you can see, and for this match they rebrand their logo with the Ukrainian colors and symbols. So Winnipeg Jets, thank you for supporting Ukraine, and guys, also for you, thank you for supporting Ukraine as well, as you usually do. And you know, guys, about the studio, it hasn't yet been finished. There will be more of the things here, and I'll change Grisha for the other poster for the videos about Ukraine. Yeah, Grisha looks like a Russian soldier who failed storming Ukrainian positions, but yeah, I always wanted a studio, so I decided to make it. Well, anyways, guys, if you like what I do, you may press your huge like to this video. By doing so, you help me a lot, and as usual, I wish you all a peaceful sky wherever you are, and have a great time.